Hello, audience. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Soul Symphony. Thank you for tuning in. So I hope the information you find here inspires you if you are on your healing journey. If you're not on one, please pass it along to somebody who might need it. Now, I wanted to just kind of, as a reminder, just remind you guys who are watching that this is just a self-expression content. So make sure that you are mindful of that. I am not asking no one to do exactly what I'm saying on this video. Now, all I'm saying here is that the information I'm giving you is actually what have helped me so far in my healing journey. And I kind of found it important to share it just to inspire whoever might need it. Okay. So that being said, I hope that it really inspires you. That's kind of the main purpose of making these videos. Now, today I'm going to address negative self-talk. So what is negative self-talk? It's actually that internal voice within us always telling us how it's judging us, judging ourselves for things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. Now, it can be anything, really. It doesn't have to be something specific. It can be anything. And that self-judgment comes actually from childhood. Most of the time, childhood experiences from parents who are critical, most of the time telling us that we're not doing good enough, or siblings or family members. It can be really from anyone from the house that can be considered older than us, who has a little bit of authority over us, because we feel belittled as we kids. Feeling belittled can be also another reason, or underestimated all the time, not feeling good enough for a task. That's just an example. So it can fuel anxiety, in childhood and all the way until adulthood. And it's something that can be perpetual. It can just be ongoing, and it can also bring low self-esteem. Now, to actually understand if we self-talking to ourselves, is very important to see how are we perceiving life in general. Now, there's always a correlation between our perception of life and our perception of self. The way we perceive ourselves is most of the time a reflection of the way we perceive the world around us. So if we are always seeing the world around us as a negative, we have a pessimistic view of the world around us, we most likely to also see us as negative, see what we do as negative. So it's kind of a reflection. So however we feel, most of the time, we tend to actually reflect it outward, and we see the world being the same way, the outside world being the same. So some examples to kind of know if you look at negative self-talking is to see if you actually telling yourself, I'm going to fail this. Whatever it is that you're doing, it can be a job, it can be a test, it can be whatever it is, that you are going there to show in any way, shape, or form that you showing your aptitude or your capabilities of being able to actually do that task. You can actually tell yourself, it's possible for us to tell ourselves, no, I'm going to fail this. I'm going to fail this. And then because we're saying that so much to ourselves, to self, that we are going to fail this specific task, it can actually trigger anxiety and eventually panic attacks. And we kind of it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because of all the anxiety, we can end up self-sabotaging that task. Or we can also ask ourselves, why is everyone else doing so much better than me? And we have that sense of, we can fall into that pit of comparing ourselves to other people, to neighbors, cousins, siblings, and we actually not putting in consideration that everybody have strengths and weaknesses. Now, my strength might not be somebody else's strength, but my strength might be their weakness, and vice versa. Their weakness might be my strength. So there is no point of comparing, because at the end of the day, it's good for us to understand that in this world we kind of compensate each other's strengths and weaknesses. We're kind of compatible to we're here to complement each other. We're not here to tear each other apart. So if we can kind of learn within to just that part of us that always kind of tend to want to compare ourselves to others, to try to self adjust. As soon as we start thinking that, just make sure that you tell yourself, oh, no, there's no need for that. Okay, there's no need for that. Stopping it in a process is actually a way to redirecting yourself to thinking more of a positive way, instead of saying, oh, why everybody's doing so much better than me. We can kind of redirect that and say, well, they're doing so much better. Well, I need to figure out how they're doing it so I can learn. So it can kind of become a learning curve instead of being a block, something that will actually stop us from progressing and getting to that level. Whatever it is that we think that actually they are doing better than us, it's a good idea to investigate or just ask, hey, you are so good at this specific task. Do you mind sharing your tips? How are you doing it? How can you share? Do you mind sharing? Do you mind just showing me how you do it? And so we can learn, because we have the ability to teach each other things. That's, again, the whole point of this video. I have learned many different ways of actually going into my healing journey, and all the things that I have learned from different people, different places, different resources. That's what I'm compiling to actually bring up in this content. So I didn't learn these by myself. There are people out there of all different walks of life that actually taught me these things that I'm talking about. And from learning it and applying it and seeing that it works, now I can kind of come and share this with somebody who might need it. So I think that's kind of a better way to kind of to address that negative self-talk. And there's also sometimes that we have the tendency to say, I guess I just can't do anything right. Now that mostly comes from childhood. There are parents that always tell their children, oh, you just can never do anything right. Anything and everything you mess up. Any and everything that I ask you to do, you mess it up. You cannot just get it right. No, that's a very, very detrimental thing to tell your child. Now, even if we think it, we shouldn't say it. Because once we say those words, we cannot take them back. And they unfortunately, we don't see it as much. But children are like sponges. They soak in any and everything they hear. Especially between the ages of 1 to 6. That's very important. And even after 6, it's just something that we have to kind of be aware of, that when we tell our children certain things, those things might not be much for us. And we might forget it the same day that we actually say that. Or repeatedly say for a year or two, we might forget that. But that child, unfortunately, might not forget that for the rest of their lives. And that can be very detrimental, and that can be something that can be the main source of a child becoming a negative self-talker as an adult. And it doesn't just start in adulthood. It starts since as children. And then unfortunately, we bring it into our adulthood, into relationships, into parenting, into workplaces. And it can be very detrimental. So that's another way. Again, we can start by actually correcting that specific cycle ourselves by teaching, by being more mindful of not saying that to our own children. Even if we heard it from our parents and it sounds good, that maybe if we say it to our child, that child will learn to do better. But instead, we can show them how to do it properly instead of telling them, oh, you just can never do nothing right. Repeatedly, that can be detrimental to their mental health over time. Instead of that, we can actually switch it into, okay, I gave you this task. You have not done it the way it's supposed to. That's okay. We all make mistakes, especially when you're a child and you're still learning. That's okay, but let me show you how to do it now. Now make sure next time, if you're not sure, you ask. That's another way to kind of just go about it. Telling our children not to actually bring them down, because it's kind of a way of bringing them down. Okay. And or again, name calling. We can also, negative self-talk is also name calling. I'm such an idiot. I'm such a this. I'm such a that. So those name calling, sometimes, most of the time, again, it comes from childhood. And once we hear that over and over as children, we tend to believe it. We tend to believe that we idiots. We tend to believe that we just dumb. We just this or that. Whatever that specific name calling was that we were receiving in our childhood, it tend to follow us. And we tend to actually believe it. And it's a way to, it's something that can very much give us low self-esteem. And it can affect relationships, workplace relationships, romantic, platonic. So just to kind of identify the patterns, just recognizing that we self-talking to ourselves. So those questions, so those phrases, once we recognize that we actually tell ourselves those phrases, it is important for us to kind of go into that switching again, retraining our brain, catch it on time, retrain our brain to not actually keep saying it. Being intentional, being very intentional about it. Oh, I see that I am catching that. I'm catching myself saying that to myself more than I need to. Now, let me go ahead and retrain my brain. Let me rephrase this. Now, we can just train our brain slowly but surely. It's okay if we just say it and then intentionally catch ourselves saying it and retract things. Saying, oh, I just say that I'm an idiot. Okay, let me go ahead and rephrase that. I'm great at this. Okay, I'm great at this. Or I will do my best to be great at this. Now, it's better that way to just kind of retrain ourselves slowly but surely to kind of go backward well, it's actually moving forward, but it's going back into the thought process to retract what we say, intentionally retract it and say it in a more positive way. Now, once we identify those patterns and we can actually just put in the work, we can see results pretty fast. And the challenging part is mostly that to identify what we're telling ourselves in those negative self-talks. Is it really true? Is it helpful? Or is it really hurting us? That's the challenging part. Once also we understand that it's not true, then what's the point of saying it? If we understand that, well, I'm calling myself an idiot, but deep down, I know I'm not an idiot. So why am I calling myself an idiot to begin with? So we can retract that thought process by just having the knowledge that what we're saying to ourselves is actually not true to begin with. So once we understand that, that's another way we can actually stop the negative self-talk, the name calling, the self-name calling, because we're calling ourselves this within our mind. In our head, we're calling ourselves these names, but all these names calling didn't just come out of nowhere. It came from childhood again. So once we understand that, it's very important to kind of just, again, retrain our brain by identifying if it's not true, it's not helpful, then there is no point of doing it. Or also be compassionate. We have to be compassionate. We need to be compassionate to ourselves. We understand that we are the product of our environment. Most of the time, 99% of the time, we are the product of our environment, where we grew up, the kind of parents we had, the type of relationships we had during the childhood with relatives, and the type of community we grew up in. All that shape us. All those different dynamics shape us to who we are today. And once we understand that, we should also understand that, therefore, Whatever trauma we have sustained in those environments is not our fault. It is not our fault. And once we understand that it's not our fault, we sustained it. So we were the victim. We were the victims to those treatments, to that abuse. We are the victims. And we still survivors. We still survivors. Once we understand that, we have to be able to feel compassion and patience. Compassion for patience for self, to allow ourselves to take time, as much time as is needed to heal from the trauma, to first of all identify the source of the trauma, to identify how to actually address it, and to identify that it is not linear. Healing is not linear. So give yourself the compassion that is needed and the understanding that's needed to actually go through your healing journey, because you did not sustain those things. You did not create those things for yourself. You did not create those things. It was, you sustained it from the environment that you came from. And sometimes it's also some of the trauma that we sustain is in adulthood. But no matter what, we are not the abuser to ourselves. Somebody else abused us. And obviously, if we had control over that, we wouldn't let it happen. We would not sit there and sustain it to begin with. So therefore, we need to be able to feel compassion, have some understanding, and be soft enough. Give us that softness enough, that softness, that empathy to ourselves, the same way we would do it for someone else, to allow them to heal, to allow them to get to where they need to get to. The same way we will lend a hand to somebody else, to allow them to heal and give them the space needed. We should be able to do that for ourselves too. And again, that also kind of circles back to the self-love and self-worth, especially self-love and self-acceptance. Once we learn to love ourselves, to accept ourselves the way we are, we kind of go back to understanding that I accept who I am. And I also accept that who I am is a product of my environment. Therefore, I love myself enough to allow myself to heal from this abuse that I have sustained in childhood that I did not have control over to begin with. That I could not control. It just happened. Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and leave it here. I hope this information helps. And please make sure that you give yourself enough time to heal, enough time to have an introspect, sit down and reflect, and make sure that your healing is going the way it's supposed to. So next episode, I'll talk about actually self-reflection or checkpoints, which is kind of a little topic that I start talking about already, but okay. So please take care of yourself, okay? Until next time, peace and love.